Hi, welcome to Roast Tea
and Matcha.
Today we're gonna talk about our May wrap up. So we read 3 books together and 7 books individually.
So starting off with the 3 books that we read, all of which were graphic novels / mangas.
Yeah.
The first one is the life-changing manga of Tidying Up by Marie Kondo. Here is what the book looks like. This book just follows the same principles that she has been iterating in her TV show as well as her actual book, The Life-Changing Art of Tidying Up.
And so in it we follow a story from one of her clients and basically about her, figuring it out. It's really good, especially if you don't feel like reading the whole Marie Kondo book. This is like a good stepping stone into once you read it, you might be inspired to read her book. So it's really good. We both liked it.
Yeah. I gave it a 4 out of 5.
The next book we read was the Heartstopper series. We read the first and the second book together. The series is basically a romance following 2 guys who become friends, and then they slowly start to fall for one another. And one of them has already come out, and the other one is kind of figuring himself out. So it's really cute. It's really wholesome. The first book, it was just really fun to watch them kind of just figure each other out and fall for each other. And then all their friends and all the side characters are also really good. It was a good, wholesome, quick read. It took me 30 minutes to read, and honestly, it was great.
Yes, we would highly recommend.
We gave both books 4.5 stars. So, Heartstopper 1 and 2, cute.
Would recommend. So, I'm going to be talking about all the books I read next, so Niki
will disappear.
Okay, so I actually continued the Heartstopper series and read the 3rd book, which I gave 4.5 stars, and to be fair, it is one of my favorite of the 3 books, because you already have the relationship established between our 2 main characters. So the 3rd book, it kind of expands on it, as well as introducing a lot of the side characters and showing how their friendship plays into everything, and it's just so wholesome and absolutely adorable. I love this series, and I'm so excited for the 4th book, which is coming at the end of the year. The next book I read is also a graphic novel, and that is this one. I borrowed it from the library. It's called The Deep and the Dark Blue by Niki Smith. This is what the cover looks like. I gave it 5 stars. I absolutely love this book. I got it because of the cover, because it's really pretty. But, oh my god, did I not expect my heart to be so... It was incredible. I didn't expect the roller coaster that came with this book. But there is LGBTQ rep. There is a strong sibling relationship, a self-identification story. The artwork in this book is stunning. Can we just appreciate how beautiful this is? It was a fantastic book with such strong character development, and I absolutely adored it. And I probably will go and get myself a copy to just add to my collection. That's how much I love this book. But that is what the 2nd book I read, which was The Deep and the Dark Blue. The next book that I read was actually an ebook. I read the 1st and 2nd installments of this series. They're not really a series following the same characters. They're in the same historical era following 2 different characters, but the stories are somewhat tied to one another. And those are a duke, a lady, and a baby, and an Earl, a girl, and a toddler. I read both of these on Kindle Unlimited, and I gave The Duke, a Lady, and a Baby 5 stars. I gave The Earl, a Girl, and a Toddler 4.5 stars. And I'll explain why. So, talking about the first book. This follows A Duke, a Lady, and a Baby very self-explanatory title. But it follows Our Lady. The custody of her baby gets passed to the Duke, who needs a nursemaid. So the lady kind of sneaks in and is like, let me take care of this child. And you just get to see their relationship play out and figure out exactly how the husband died and how that's related to her getting custody of her child back. And it is a really, really lovely and wholesome story. I loved all three of those characters. Like, the Duke is hilarious, and honestly, he is by far my favorite. And the lady, she's so spunky, I adore her, and the baby's just adorable. And it is a biracial relationship, which I didn't really expect when I picked up the book originally, but that was super well done, and I really enjoyed reading it, and that is why I gave it 5 stars. It was lovely, truly. The second book, which is An Earl, a Girl, and a Toddler, follows 2 of the characters from the first book and just highlights their story. It follows our girl who actually lost her memory, and she is trying to figure out her past while moving on with her future that involves the Earl. Other than that, the story was really good, and I did enjoy it. It felt a little longer than the first book. There were some parts that were kind of slow, but their dynamic was hilarious, and I really liked that book too. And both of these are super good, and I would highly recommend them. The next book I read is called A Universe of Wishes, and this is a collection of short stories written by a bunch of well-known authors. A few names that probably some of you know are Victoria Schwab, Liba Bray, Rebecca Roanhouse, Nick Stone, and a bunch of others. This book focuses on short stories that have LGBTQ plus representation, but also still tie into fantasy, which I thoroughly enjoyed. I mean, there's one story about a heist and a bunch of robbers. There's another story that is like a prequel to an actual series, which is awesome. There was one story in this book that I desperately wanted it to be longer, but obviously it was a short story. It was done so well, and I wanted more. But I gave this book 4 stars because while there were some stories that I absolutely loved, there were some that I just skipped through because it didn't really fit my vibe. But overall, it was phenomenal, and I listened to it in an audiobook, so it was just like little bits of short stories throughout the day, and I enjoyed it thoroughly, and I would actually recommend that too. Okay. The next book I read is this lovely book right here, which is Of Fire and Stars by Audrey Coulthurst. Coulthurst? This is how you say it. And I gave this book 4 out of 5 stars. It was absolutely wholesome, and let me explain a little bit about it to you. This book follows 2 princesses. You have Princess Deanna, who has magical powers and is betrothed to a prince in this kingdom that is very much opposed of magical beings. And then you have Princess Mare, who is the sister of the prince in this kingdom. And she is very much a tomboy, like the idea of being a lady and being married off for royal benefits, such as alliances and stuff like that. So it follows both of these princesses and their journeys within this kingdom, the battle with magical beings and the government and non-magical beings. It is a sapphic romance, and my first ever sapphic romance that I read, and I absolutely adored it. I love these characters. It is a duology, so I already have the second book ready to read, and it just continues where the first book stopped and expands on their story. But if you wanted to, you can just read the first book and then call it a day. Either way, it's super good. Highly recommend. I adored it. It also has now gotten me obsessed with sapphic romances, and I have a bunch queued up for June. And the final book in my May TBR is Fire by Kristin Cashore. Cashore? It's this one right here. And this book is the second book of the Graceling universe, and it is actually a prequel to the first book, but I recommend reading this after you read the first book. Otherwise, the first book might not be as amazing as it was. So I recommend just following the publication date, even though this is technically a prequel. It makes sense when you read them both. It follows our main character, Fire, who is a mixed breed between a human and a dragon person. And these dragon people have an aura about them that makes them very sought after and attractive to humans and other creatures. So it's kind of about her handling all of that attention, be it not always good attention, but also dealing with an environment that is in a civil war. If you like more of like a political based book or a book between like a war, this one would definitely be up your alley. I gave this one 4.5 out of 5 stars because these kinds of political books aren't really my normal forte. I did enjoy it and I absolutely loved this book. But the first book is kind of like an adventure, while this one is very much slower paced compared to the first book. But the relationship between Fire and the prince in this story is so wholesome and it felt very genuine. Like, it was a slow burn romance, don't get me wrong. Do not expect a first kiss when they first meet. There's a little bit of enemies to lovers sprinkled in there, but not that much. But it is very much slow burn, and it felt very realistic in this story, which I greatly appreciated. Also, all of the characters in this book are super, super cute, and I adored them as well. Love this book, and I already bought the third book in the Graceling series, which is Bitter Blue, and I'm going to read that soon too, because these books, love them. So I would, again, highly recommend you check it out if you're interested. But those are all the books that I read for May. So I'm going to pass it over to Niki to talk about the book she read.
Hey guys, so for the month of May, I read 10 books total. 3 I read with Isuri, and then the rest I read on my own. So the first book I read on my own was Magic Bitter, Magic Sweet by Charlie N. Holmberg. That one is about this girl. She has amnesia. She can't remember who she is, but she has this power to be able to bake emotions into her baked goods. And so it's about her journey to try and figure out who she is. And the town that she lives in now gets raided, and she gets taken, and so she gets sold into basically slavery. And the person that buys her wants to use her powers for different things. And so it's about her, and then there's this ghost boy. I'm not explaining this well. It doesn't matter. Anyways, I gave the book 4 stars. Overall, it was really good. I really enjoyed the story, and the mystery was interesting. I did figure out most of the plot twists, but that's not her fault. I just kind of put 2 and 2 together really quickly. But yeah, I really liked it, and her books are really good. I've been enjoying her books so far, so it was a solid read. The second book I read was Wintersong by S. Jae-Jones. It is Goblin King romance. So the girl, her sister gets taken by the Goblin King to be his bride, and so she ends up going to the underworld to save her. And it's about the story of her trying to figure that out, and it's also kind of like a dark romance. Overall, I gave it a 3.5. Main reason, because I didn't know it was a duology. Maybe a duology. It might be more than, I hope it's a duology, because now I'm reading the second book thinking, well, I'm going to eventually read the second book, thinking that it's a duology, and if it ends without it, I'm gonna be, anyways. So I thought this was a standalone, so I read it thinking it was a standalone, and then it ended, and I was like, what kind of ending is this? Because it just ended not well. And so So it's fine. Also, it's kind of long. I mean, it's written because, she wrote it well because it's supposed to be like time moves really weird in the underworld, in the underworld where the Goblin King lives. So like, it's done on purpose, but it felt long. But it was really good. I liked it. It was an interesting story. Also, it was like about like music is a major part of it. And also our main girl, she's not very confident and she's very like down on herself. And like it's fine in the beginning, but I feel like she like continues to be that way. And I need her to get it together. But I liked it. It was fine. It was a 3.5 stars. The next book I read was the Mortal Instruments manga graphic novel version. I gave that a 3.5 too. Honestly, I didn't like the art style a lot. It was very busy art style, which some people might like, but I didn't. And then it followed the Mortal Instrument. Do I have to explain what the Mortal Instrument's about? I think people should know by now. It's about shadow hunters who fight demons and they have runes on their hands. And this girl named Clare, she ends up stumbling across and she can see them for some reason. And then she ends up kind of joining them. That's all I'm going to say about that. But it basically follows the book. Some differences. But it was good. It was fine. Okay. The next book I read was A Curious Beginnings by Veronica Speedwell. And this is a mystery novel, and it's a part of a series. But this one follows our main girl. Her aunts die, and so she's kind of left alone. And she's very independent, but she ends up almost getting abducted by somebody, and she gets saved by this German baron. And the German baron kind of knows her, like she doesn't know who her parents are, and so the baron says that he knows her mother, and so she goes with him, and he puts her in the care of this guy named Stoker, who is I want to say Indiana Jones style, like archaeologist kind of person, but he's retired, and so he leaves her with him. His name is Stoker, and then the Baron gets murdered, and so they end up having to basically find out who killed the Baron and also try and keep her from being abducted / also run away from the cops. It's really nice. It was super interesting. The girl was like super sassy. I loved her. She was hilarious. And the two of their dynamic is pretty good. It was a fun, I listened to the audiobook of it while I was working, and so it was a pretty fun audiobook to listen to. I gave it 4 stars. It was a solid 4. I enjoyed it. The next book I'm going to talk about is The Shadow of Kyoshi, which is the second book of the Kyoshi series. Gotta say, like this first book more. If no one knows what the Avatar Kyoshi is, it follows Kyoshi, who was the reincarnation before Aang from Avatar The Last Airbender. Don't know what that is. Should probably Google it. But, so it follows Kyoshi, and in the first book, it's basically about her, finding out that she's the Avatar, and then, training and, all that stuff. Second book could have been better. I kind of miss the characters that were in the first book that kind of only showed up a little bit in the second book, so it kind of felt kind of empty. Also, there was a lot of slow points and mixes of the pacing was weird, honestly, and I felt like Kyoshi unlearned things. I don't know, some of her character development kind of went away from the first book. This one was not my favorite. I'm hoping the next book will be better, but I gave it a 3.754 stars, kind of. It could have been better, I feel like. It wasn't too bad, though. The next book is red, white, and royal blue, which I have right here. This was cute and wholesome. Oh, I should explain what it's about. This is basically following the Prince of England and the first son of the President of the United States. They kind of have like an enemies to lovers trope. And so it's basically about two of them. They kind of start off antagonistic, and then they are like forced to become friends, and then they become friends, and then they become more than friends. But it was really cute. It was really wholesome. I gave it 5 stars. It was hilarious. Okay, I loved all of the characters. They were all just so funny and like very like the world felt lived in, and everyone felt like important, and no one felt like no character was like two-dimensional. Everyone just felt really, really wholesomely good. God, this was so just a funny, hilariously funny. Did I say funny? I should say it again. I laughed out loud a lot. It's really good. I loved it. 10 out of 10. Would recommend. This is a book I loved. Now, my favorite book of May. House in the Cerulean Sea. This book made me so happy. So basically this follows Linus. He is a kind of like social worker for gifted children that are in orphanages. So he kind of audits orphanages where like children with magical abilities live. And so he gets sent to basically audit an orphanage that houses the most dangerous magical children. And there he meets like these precious kids. And their caretaker, who is Arthur, and the two of them kind of get close, and it's about Linus kind of finding himself along with getting to know all the kids and Arthur and like the other people that are around them and the village that they live near. And it was so good. And that concludes all of my books from the month of May. And
thank you for watching our video.
Like and subscribe.
Until next time.
Peace.
Deuces.
Bye.